You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Sarah Gulseth.
I'm Andy Bates.
Thanks to Concordia University, Wisconsin for your support of The Coffee Hour. You can find out more about Concordia University, Wisconsin at cuw.edu.
Live uncommon.
We get to revisit a guest we had on the last day before we all went home for the coronavirus pandemic, and that is Flame, Grammy-nominated hip-hop artist. Welcome back to The Coffee Hour, Flame.
Hey, glad to be back. Yes.
A lot has happened in your life, well, in everybody's lives, but in your life, particularly in the last, 11 months. You've been busy doing a whole bunch of creative endeavors, which has been really cool to follow on social media. Talk about your aim, your focus when you're creating all of these new EPs and albums.
Yeah, I sort of took a different approach in terms of how I wanted to present my art. So instead of full-length projects, I said I'll just hit people with these short EPs, but still try to make them filled with content, still enjoyable, but just enough to think about, to consider, to actually raise more questions. And so that's kind of been my goal. And it's been fun. It's been very interesting, great dialogue. But I'm enjoying the process, and I think people are being challenged and also enjoying good music, I hope.
Speaking of good music, last year you released Extra Nos EP, which someone has to have a little bit of Latin background or some intrigue at least to even know that it's Extra Nos. Tell us, what was the focus of this project?
Yeah, so Extra Nos really was sort of me exposing my followers to my journey, a bit more of what I was learning in terms of theology and how I was processing that in my personal life. So Extra Nos was just my way of saying, hey, mostly to my Calvinistic listeners, um, I have made some shifts in my thinking and I want to bring you up to speed. I don't want to, sort of hide that, but I want you to really enjoy the truths that I'm learning and coming into. And man, it's been fun. It's been a bunch of pushback, but also a lot of open-mindedness. And that's really what started what I now consider the Extra No series, in which I continue to unpack more of Lutheran thought and really just this celebration of grace outside of us rather than mostly an internal focus.
Mm-hmm. What was the response from people? What kind of conversations did you have when Extra Nos dropped and people were having to listen to it and come to terms with what you were now producing?
Yeah, initially there was silence, and then silence turned to curiosity, and then I think at that point people were like, man, this is very interesting. I've never heard these sort of truths put together this way. And then people wanted to know why. Everybody wants to know the motive. And so that's been great to help people see on a personal level, not only my own experience with sort of some of the struggles with the Calvinistic paradigm, but even their own. And they've been able to sort of identify through my experience, their own experience, and draw parallels. And then people say, now I want the piece that you found. I want to know more about the Reformation from the Lutheran side, which sort of was kept at bay from us in the Calvinistic world. So I would say by and large, it's been positive from the laypersons to pastors. I've had messages since then where pastors are now saying, hey, this is difficult for me. One pastor in particular is now going through the ordination process to become a Lutheran pastor. So, and he was a Reformed Baptist pastor. So things like that are really happening. And so it's crazy.
That is pretty impressive. I mean, you have a pretty wide audience, and that shift must have been an interesting thing to live through. Why dive so deeply into theology as an artist? You have, I mean, you make choices about what your product is going to be, what your art is going to be. Why dive so deeply into these theological things that may go over people's heads?
Yeah, it fits my personality, so I feel like I'm really being true to my own interests and the things that excite me. So I read these kind of things casually, leisurely, and as well as devotionally. So it's just really a normal expression of my average day. So that's one thing. And then I think the second thing is I sort of branded myself this way since my first album came out a while ago. So people have come to expect this, and it's their normal for me. And also, I like to sort of put things out there to keep people reaching upward. So not giving them the same sort of mundane, just kind of stuff that's already celebrated and out there. I want to sort of be distinct and unique, and people have enjoyed reaching higher, if I can say higher. People have enjoyed reaching higher to understand something different, something that they don't normally hear presented across the pulpit or in their regular church life. So yeah, it's just become something not only myself but my fans have enjoyed about me, and I love feeding them that because um, it's something that some weird people like me enjoy.
Someone's really studied Lutheran theology when they wrestle with saying the phrase reaching higher.
Yep.
I'm like, can I say that and still be nice?
So, as you've already mentioned, the projects they're ongoing, and so now the Extra Nos project continues with Christ for You. Nice name, by the way.
Yeah, I like that.
Thank you.
That just released recently. What is this EP about?
So this EP just picks up where Extra Nos left off. Extra Nos was primarily dealing with justification and sort of fleshing that out and contrasting it with the Calvinistic understanding, at least from the Reformed Baptist side, but then also Calvinism in general in many ways. But I wanted to expand that and also discuss the sacraments and show that this justification isn't just something that we reflect on in our minds based on what Jesus did 2,000 years ago. It also is something that we experience regularly at the Lord's table. And I mentioned it a bit on Extra Notes, but I knew it went over people's heads. But here now we're unpacking that, and people are like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that those statements you made in Extra Notes were filled with what's on Christ for you. And so it's like a ocean of new ideas that people just weren't expecting, but in a good way though. So now people are curious, like, man, why didn't anyone present to me the sacramental realities of God's means of grace? And I'm like, man, I agree. I felt like in many ways I was sort of indoctrinated rather than educated. I just was taught this is what the church teaches concerning communion, the wafer and the grape juice, case closed. And so, like me, and many people are saying, man, thank you for at least exposing us to this. We don't know if we agree yet. It's like new information, but we're enjoying the search because we want that same peace, comfort, and assurance that you found, that the church has found throughout the ages. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like fleshing out the catechism on Lord's Supper in music in EP form, which I think is a really cool thing to see our theology from a very different perspective with in different language makes it maybe more accessible for some people. Have you found that?
Yeah, I would say so. Because one, theological education can be expensive for many people. So I feel like I'm serving in that way where I get to go off and spend isolated time in an academic environment, and then I get to, go to the people that may not have that opportunity, and I get to say, hey, here's what I found. Here's some things worth considering. Dig in, and I can point them to resources and podcasts and sermons and things like that, books, and then they can sort of on their own time in their own budget, make their way through some of these topics. And in that way, I feel happy to serve people who have been following me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have an entire album about the Lord's Supper.
It's so funny. I was thinking like, because even when I finished the project, I was like, man, there's so many more things to say about this subject. But at the same time, it does feel like I said a lot. And so I really wanted to say as much as I could, but in a short breath, so as to not overwhelm people, but also give them a lot to think about. So I was trying to find that sweet spot, but there's so many layers and angles to it. There are theological angles that cover Christology. So there's a difference in how Calvinists and Lutherans understand the hypostatic union. I wanted to expose that. Then there were practical aspects in terms of how this plays out when you're trying to find assurance of your salvation. Maybe you're struggling and you're conscious. I wanted to attack that angle. Then I wanted to deal with some exegesis and just pretty much meaning walking through some particular passages of scripture and showing how they do teach that in this mysterious way, Christ is present in the bread and the wine. And I also wanted to show some really contradictions that we've learned in many ways. So many angles to cover, and still there are many more that didn't make the project. I didn't even do much talking on this project. I really just tried to give all of my time to saying things in the music. And yeah.
So normally here on KFUO, when pastors use big words, we ask them to explain them, but leave it to our favorite hip hop artists to start dropping all these big words, and now we have to go back and unpack them.
Okay.
Things I never thought I'd say.
I love that.
I do too. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. The big one that I heard in there that you dropped was, I think, hyperstatic union.
Yeah.
What did you learn? Where did you learn that? And what does this mean?
Yeah, man, I said it casually. Wow.
Yeah, you did.
Okay, yeah. Let me see. So basically, we're talking about who Jesus is and how he exists in himself. So when we're talking about the hypostatic union, we're talking about Jesus's personal union, how he is not only fully God, but he's also fully man, or he's truly God and truly man. So there's some interesting things happening in this one person who is God, who is also man. And we use the term hypostatic union to sort of get at that. And yeah.
We have more to talk about with Flame, Grammy-nominated hip-hop artist, about his latest EP, Christ for You, in the Extra Nos series. We need to take a quick break, though. You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Sarah Gulseth.
I'm Andy Bates.
While being forgiven, the old Adam gotta drown down in baptism. So remember it. If you've been redeemed, better say so. I've been redeemed. We can't become clean. Coram Deo. Switch your team. What that mean? That's Latin for before God. We ignore God.
You're a miracle. You know that, right? A living, breathing, one-of-a-kind miracle. You were created to stand apart, to share your gifts in the service of others, to make an uncommon impact in a common world. And at Concordia University, it's our mission to help you do that, to live uncommon. To learn more about Concordia, go to cuw.edu.
It's for you. As I come around, it's for you. Lord, separated wine, it's for you.
Welcome back to The Coffee Hour. I'm Sarah Gulseth.
I'm Andy Bates.
We have Flame on with us today, Grammy-nominated hip-hop artist, digging into theology today, which is super great. I feel like I'm in like a mini seminary class right now. Always fun to do on the Coffee Hour. Talking about your latest EP, Christ for You, in the Extra Nos series, which is a series I'm super excited about. It's catechesis in hip-hop EP form, which is really great, really awesome. This Christ for You album is all on the Lord's Supper and our Lutheran theology, what we believe. What kinds of conversations have you been having on social media with people who have not heard this theology before or been exposed to this theology before and really don't know what you're talking about.
Man, the conversation, it's been so vast. Like I've had just, emojis that express disappointment. People like just like rolling their eyes. So I've had those kind of sarcastic responses, all the way to and to which I respond, a passive aggression, huh? No, say it with your chest. Say it with your chest, sir. But anyway, no, so it's been that all the way to people just saying, oh my goodness, I've been thinking about this on my own for the last X amount of years. This is crazy. I've had friends hit me up who went to my Reformed Baptist institutions with me and have said, wow, bro, I've been thinking through these same things. Thank you for exposing this and helping me further think it through. So the spectrum has been broad and everything in between, but really it's been healthy. People have been sending me screenshots of the Book of Concord. People have been sending me screenshots of, Bible verses, asking me, what do I think about this? They're quoting lyrics and it's all over the place, really just a time of digging and research. So I love that. That's so satisfying and is very productive.
Mm. So you spent a lot of time studying theology. I mean, you've spent quite a few years studying theology. Now, what are you learning as you are creating this music, as you're creating the most recent 2 EPs?
Yeah, really, I guess I'm becoming more aware of how practical theology can be and should be, because these aren't just like floaty ideas that are just fun to wrestle with. People are really dealing with stress and trauma and confusion and sadness in, just in this pandemic. Uh, People are thinking a lot deeper with a lot more free time. So I'm able to show them how these are really gospel realities that should bear on our joy, our peace, the way we see life and how we understand God and all of the stresses and highs and lows of the human experience. And that's what I'm enjoying mostly about pointing people to the promises that God has given us at the Lord's table, salvation that He gives us by faith through grace alone. All these things are helpful on your everyday journey throughout life. And that's something I'm really, I guess, reconnecting with and celebrating within myself.
Yeah, there's such a difference between learning and absorbing all of the rich theology that we have in our Lutheran tradition, and then turning that around and explaining it to other people and applying it in our daily lives, our daily vocations, and all of the things that we run into as we live out our lives here. Uh, how have you seen that applied to people who listen to your music, who are dealing with things? How have you seen that applied?
Yeah. So, like, let me see. If I could think of an example.
Yeah.
So a guy just contacted me and he was saying, hey, just in light of the social climate, a lot of social unrest, there's been a lot of discussion in my household, and we're really just kind of tired, exhausted with the subject. We're stressed out, but we want unity, we want peace, we want the church to get along. And I'm thinking, man, it's so interesting how there are implications from the Lord's Supper for the social unrest, at least in terms of the Christian. And by that, what I meant was not only are we bound together with Christ at the Lord's table, but also with one another. So what a way to remember that we're still family, with the church abroad, and that the Lord is constantly uniting us together at the Lord's table. And to reflect on that, to think about that, sort of helps you reset, recalibrate, and have a posture of love. Sometimes it might be tough love because you might not always get along with your family members, but nevertheless, you're reminded we're family, and God wants us to be one. And that forces you to think about it and try to figure out how to make that a reality as much as it is in God's mind. So I just stuff like that. It's been so useful on a practical level.
I think I remember when we talked last. You talked about wanting people to use their talents, their art forms. Music being one of them, to share theology, to share the Word of God with people. How have you been encouraging people to do that through your music and through your platforms on social?
Yes. So there was a guy who sent me a demo on the Lord's Supper, but this was during the space when Extra Notes had just released. And I think it was more from like an Anglican perspective. So it was interesting. And so we had a great conversation about, just kind of comparing and contrasting what he thought and what Lutheranism teaches. And I just said, man, at least I'm encouraged that you're thinking about these things and also writing about them. I'm producing a project that'll cover it a bit more. Let's see what you think once it releases. But I like that artists are now not like I invented it, but I like that I'm adding this new layer to the subject that artists can think about, and hopefully there will be more Lutheran rappers, right? Like
Mhm.
artists who aren't afraid, like I think I said this last time, to be Lutheran out loud in their
Mhm.
music. I love using um, vocation and all this multiple facets to do good in the world, but I also think it's good to use the arts to explicitly expose your Lutheran thought. There's still a way to do that, to be creative, to be cool, not be corny. All C's, kind of cool. But but yeah, I think there's still a way to do that, but to help people to see explicitly what you're seeing from the scriptures as a Lutheran thinker, and that's attractive. And not everyone has to do that, but I think many more should, as we expose this hidden treasure, really, that I feel like I found years ago.
Are you finding yourself connected to more Lutherans these days? Are you finding support and love?
Yeah, I would say so, man. The Twitter community is strong, man. Like I didn't know what I was getting myself into. It's just like I just start following everybody back that says Lutheran in their bio or something like that. But it's been so much love, so much support, um, and I think it's been fun to see crazy and weird memes of just Lutheran thought versus others. So I like that there's humor about this thing. It's not just this sterile environment. It's fun. So that's been cool. Really good to connect with people. Obviously, the pandemic, I can't connect in physical as I would like,
Mhm.
but nevertheless, online has been really good, really healthy to share resources. And people have been hooking me up and just drawing me more into the culture of things, because I got the theology, but I didn't get all of the cultural notes. So that's been fun to learn too.
Find your way around the classic Midwest Lutheran potluck.
Exactly right. I still haven't been to a potluck, by the
You
way.
still, oh man, gotta fix that. After this pandemic is over, you gotta get yourself to a potluck.
I need to. I need to.
Oh man, and I think you've been on nearly like every Lutheran podcast too. It seemed there was a stretch there where every podcast had a flame episode, which was kind of fun to hear all of the
Yeah.
different perspectives of everyone.
I think so. And it's been cool because I know there are like subtle differences, but I do like that at least there's an appeal to the Book of Concord.
Mhm.
There's a general unity that's unique that you don't oftentimes see in other denominational backgrounds. So I've been celebrating that too. And I like that people are free to have their differences, but have them, with charity and with respect. So I love that.
Yeah, I noticed on this the Christ for You EP, you have a shout out to Professor Sanchez, and on the first one you had a shout out to Dr. Bierman. Is this a theme? Are you giving a shout out to a CSL professor in every EP?
I know, right? I'm just trying to be as honest as I can. I remember, so I was as I was studying Christology and I was doing well. There were just certain things I didn't quite, I guess, grasp in terms of the differences between Calvinistic and Lutheran Christology. And so Sanchez was the one who set me down and just put the magnifying glass on some of the distinctions. And I was like, man, I'm so thankful for this because I couldn't see it. I really thought that Lutherans and Calvinists were lockstep. on Christology, and leave it to Sanchez, who's pretty much a guru on these matters. He's like, oh, well, let me sort of peel back the layers for you. And I really enjoyed it. I got a chance to spend a lot of one-on-one time with him. And so that was, man, one of the sweetest moments in my training there.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what's next in this Extra Nose series? Since you've created into a series, what's the next step?
Man, there's so many things. I definitely want to cover baptism. I also want to cover confession and absolution. I think that is a sweet reality that has been lost on many of us, especially because people are really spooked out in the evangelical world that is Catholic. And but I want to, if I can, help show what was preserved in the Lutheran tradition with confession and absolution and how healthy that is. Man, I think about how many people walking around just keeping things on the inside with no one to talk to or feeling afraid to expose things about themselves. But if you can find in confession and absolution a path towards relieving that burden, I mean, my goodness, that is biblical truth in a most practical way. So I want to write about that. And yeah, that's just a couple of the things that I have in mind. I'm already working on it though. So.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sure. I imagine your brain never stops thinking about all of this stuff.
And then you know what? I eventually want to print out all the lyrics into some type of booklet.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe it'll live on past, I don't know how long rap music will be cool and accepted art form. But, say 500 years from now, if someone finds those lyrics in some sand buried somewhere, it'd be cool for them to think about it again. So, yeah.
Where can we find all of your music?
Yes. So all of the music is available on all digital platforms. So wherever music is sold digitally, it is available there. You can go to clearsight, SIGHT music.com, find it there. And it's in the link to all my bios at Flame 314. So I plastered it anywhere it can be put.
And we'll put links to that in the show notes for this episode as well. Flame, thank you so much for joining us on the Coffee Hour again. It has been a real pleasure to dig into some theology with you.
Yes, thanks for having me. It's always fun.
You're listening to the Coffee Hour. I'm Sarah Gulseth.
I'm Andy Bates.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit KFUO.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@KFUO.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.